Hey nerds, what's up? Welcome back to another board game video where we overview a board game and its expansions to talk about what the expansions add to the overall gameplay. Our board game that we're talking about today is Call to Adventure. So just like last time, we'll do a basic overview of how the game is played, along with the expansions that we own in our collection and what they add to the game. So without further ado, let's get started.
Call to Adventure is a fantasy-themed storytelling rune-rolling game. Using a journal-looking tableau, each player will be collecting sets of cards to tell their character's story through 3 acts. At the beginning, each player will be dealt 2 origin cards, 2 motivation cards, and 2 destiny cards to choose from. The origin and motivation cards will remain face-up, while each player's destiny will remain hidden until the end of the game. Each card has unique artwork and runic symbols with abilities that match the characteristics of the card. For example, an apprentice card contains the intelligence and wisdom runes, giving that player advantage to any wisdom or intelligence challenge, adding those specific runes to the basic runes you use to roll. Depending on what motivations and destiny cards the player was given, they will choose cards with similar runes that will both fit thematically in their story, but also help with further challenges. Each player will also start with a hero card, but depending on their storyline and where they are on their corruption tracker, you can collect and use anti-hero cards. And each player will also start with 3 experience tokens. Players will start in Act 1, choosing from the open pool available before them. There are challenge cards and trait cards. Just like the other cards, there are runes and story icons. Matching icons and runes will only increase the player's advantage for challenges and give points at the end of the game, something for the player to think of as they choose their cards. Challenge cards come with 2 different paths that the character can choose. Sometimes it is a darker path, while the other is lighter, while others are just more challenging. Whenever a player goes for a challenge card, they will roll the runes that they have available that match the runes on the challenge card. There will almost always be 2 options of runes to use. Players can also use hero or anti-hero cards to aid in winning the challenge, as well as paying 1 experience token to use a dark rune. The dark runes are risky because if your dark rune lands with the moon upright, the player goes down on their corruption tracker. Depending on how low you are on the corruption tracker, the player will not be able to use hero cards. Trait cards can be taken by paying or meeting the requirements stated on that card. There are also ally cards that will be revealed in Act 1 and 2 that immediately get placed under a challenge card of that player's choosing. The bonus of allies give you extra story icons and a certain ability that you can use during your game. The downside is that the ally adds another point of challenge to your challenge cards. Once a player has 3 cards placed under their origin cards, Act 2 will be available to them on their next turn, and subsequently the other players as well. Act 2 and Act 3 are approached the same way, revealing new traits and challenges for the players to add to their story. Each act provides harder and harder challenges and includes unique adversaries as well. Speaking of adversaries, players can change the gameplay of Call to Adventure by playing cooperatively or in solo mode, and bringing in the adversary deck. The adversary will add certain effects to the overall gameplay of Call to Adventure, prompting the players to work together in order to win challenges and prevent the adversary from receiving the experience tokens it needs to win the game. But depending on the runes rolled, an adversary card can be pulled, making the player's attempt at their challenge cards more difficult. The player who has 3 cards under their 3rd act first initiates the end of the game, giving all other players 1 final turn. Then they will add up their scores based on their triumph points, tragedy points, experience tokens, matching story icons, and the use of hero and anti-hero cards. The player with the most points wins. Call to Adventure's The Stormlight Archive expansion plays very similarly to the original game, but brings all of the flavors of Brandon Sanderson's world with new origins, classes, and destinies of the Stormlight series. Every card has beautiful artwork depicting recognizable scenes and characters from anyone who has read this book series. Even the hero and anti-hero cards have specific abilities that add to the new feature of this expansion, which is the Knights Radiant symbol. The Knights Radiant are specific people who have unique abilities depending on what knight order they fall under. These are all new options of destinies in the game and can be turned over in the game if you meet the certain requirements on each card. There are also new adversaries that you can incorporate into the co-op and solo version of the game. This game is great for anyone who has read this book series, like I said before. It's like owning a fan art collection, and it's a really fun way to incorporate this story into a board game. The only negative things I find with this game are the new player boards are flimsier than the original game's boards, and the 3D experience tokens are replaced by cardboard cutouts, making it a little less tactile for those who enjoy that. But overall, a recommendation for any Sanderson fan who enjoys board games. Now, the expansion I would recommend for all Call to Adventure players is the Epic Origins expansion. Similarly to the Stormlight expansion, the player board and experience tokens are of lesser quality, but the Epic Origins expansion adds several exciting features to the game. Probably the most exciting feature is the new Heritage cards and new class cards. The Heritage cards are cards that you can place to the side of your player board, giving your player unique advantages on your rune rolling. All of the Heritage cards are based on the races you can play in Dungeons & Dragons, which is very fun. As well, the new class cards contain all of the classic classes that you can play in Dungeons & Dragons, like a bard or a rogue or a wizard. With these new class cards, you can pull your experience tokens onto the card in order to gain specific advantages on what types of runes you are collecting. Along with these, the Epic Origin expansions come with new Origin cards, Destiny cards, Story cards, and Hero and Anti-Hero cards. Adding to the overall Dungeons & Dragons feel, the Epic Origin expansion comes with a campaign mode, 7 unique scenarios and adversaries that players will have to work together to defeat, with a similar playing style of the adversaries in the original game, but with a few twists along the way. Just opening up the envelopes and reading the small flavor cards makes it a fun experience to go through and adds a small campaign that isn't too overwhelming or long to complete. I really enjoy adding the expansion to the original game, giving us tons of story outcomes and choices to play with. I really think the addition of the Heritage cards and those classic D&D classes really add to that storytelling element that players enjoy already in this game. My only other gripe with this expansion is that I wish instead of just giving us a similar game board and having us place the Heritage cards on the outside of the mat, I wish that they had made a foldable player mat that really incorporated the Heritage cards into the story. I think that would have been a nice touch. But again, overall, if you are a fan of Call to Adventure, I would highly recommend adding the Epic Origins expansion to your game.
I think overall, having these expansions with Call to Adventure just adds either a different type of fantasy flavor if you're really into Brandon Sanderson, as well as Epic Origins, I think just adds an overall more D&D fun feeling and campaign feeling to your adventures in general. I'm really glad to have all of these expansions, and that is why I want to do these overview games to talk about why I think these expansions are really great and you should add them to your collection. Now, if you didn't start with the original Call to Adventure, you could start with just Epic Origins, but I think having all of them just gives you even more variety in your cards, as well as just different options for your overall gameplay. Let me know what board game I should overview next. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.